Okay, trying again. This looks a little bit better. Is there maybe some sound coming through? Sure hope so. This is attempt maybe 4 or 5 now to get this recorded. So please let me know if there are any issues. Although I'll have to start again if so. Hopefully not. Let's see how we go. So, hello everybody and welcome. Um, this talk is going to be about concussion. So, normally when I do this series of videos, it's all about what you can do before you go and see a practitioner. It's kind of, if you've got an injury, you're dealing with a condition, something like that, the things that you want to think about, the process that it's likely to be, and a bit of stuff that you can try so that when it comes time to go see a professional who can help you further, you already know that you've sort of taken the first step of the journey. You kind of have a better understanding of what you need, and whether that's me or somebody else, then you waste a little bit less time in the beginning, save a little bit of money in the beginning, and you can actually see, is this something that is potentially right for you? In this instance, when we are talking about concussions, we are absolutely not going to be talking like that. There's a lot of research showing that getting things exactly right in the beginning stages of a concussion is the best possible indicator of how well your recovery is going to be. So if you do things right, if you go see the proper specialists and experts right when you believe yourself to have had a concussion, to go get that confirmed or whatever, your chances of getting through it with minimal issues, symptoms, problems is much, much higher. So anytime that you're coming to me saying, "Hey, I think I might have a concussion," I'm not even going to say, let's do some work together. For me, I'm not qualified to diagnose anyone with a concussion. I would tell you, I think you should go, see your GP, physio, whatever. If it's, especially in the initial stages, if this has just happened, then I'm not the person to give the best information. What I want this resource to be is just to be a little bit of a timeline. So if you are joining and you have had something just happen to you, especially in that first 72 hours, so 3 days, first of all, I would say watch the video if you want, but go get yourself assessed straight away. Um, However, as we go longer and longer, then there's probably less that if you go to an emergency practitioner, they're going to tell you a little bit less. They're going to say this is what you need to do to make sure it's not bad, and you absolutely follow that advice. I'm going to talk about things that we can look at doing maybe on top of that to help things recover a little bit faster. And again, at all times, when you start working with somebody, the improvements are going to be much, much greater. This will just be things to think about. It's going to be much, much harder to do this one on your own. So just to let you know, I'm making the video because it was a request and because it comes up a lot, but I am saying straight away, this is in no way medical advice. Medical advice is always what you take ahead of a video of a person talking to you on YouTube. And in this case, I would make it your imperative to go seek a medical professional in the first instance, find out their opinion, get their thoughts before then going and trying to get yourself back to, your everyday life as quickly as you can, or get yourself back into circus training as quick as you can. We can talk about how to do that, but it's always better to be extra, extra careful when we're talking about a head injury. So I've taken almost 5 minutes to clarify that. I hope that it is clear. Next, before we kind of delve into things, the big thing that we're going to have to be talking about is what a concussion is and symptoms. So, and what kind of range of intensity of symptoms that we might be able to expect. So, reasons to believe you might have had a concussion, the two big ones is if you've had a blow to the head, so some kind of knock in the head, or some kind of whiplash injury. So you don't need to be hit in the head to have a concussion. You don't need to be knocked out to have a concussion. A whiplash injury was enough. A knock to the head. If you lose consciousness, obviously that's a sign that maybe something has happened. It's not a guarantee, but if you don't lose consciousness, there's still a possibility as well. Okay, so what is a concussion? A concussion is basically a compression on the brain. So when you take that knock to the head or have that whiplash injury, your brain is going to get kind of pushed, squashed up against itself, and then it's going to bounce back into sort of its regular shape. And what can happen when you do that is the brain cells, the neurons in there can get squashed up. They can get little tears and cuts and rips, or even severed entirely. And out of that leaks a load of toxins, basically, a load of things that will be toxic to the brain if they get left there for a long time. And if it gets even more serious, then that could affect bigger tissues. It could even start to affect the blood supply to the brain. So, if it's so big that it starts to affect the blood supply, then that could potentially be really serious. So, number one of the reasons we're saying that you should absolutely seek medical help if you think you have a concussion is, in these sort of circumstances, the potential for quite severe and quite significant damage is very, very large. So when this kind of thing happens, the advice is going to be for at least the very first 4 hours or so. If you want to be cautious, push that a little bit longer. If you start to suddenly get any kind of severe negative symptoms, then that's going to be your sign to go straight to the emergency room. It's not a guarantee that something is definitely wrong, but you absolutely want to know straight away. Okay, so those first 4 hours is kind of where people will tell you, don't even fall asleep. Stay awake, stay chilled out and resting, but stay vigilant about your own symptoms. Probably, I would recommend even have somebody with you for those 4 hours or a little bit longer, just so that they can be checking in with you. You will know symptoms like pain, you might know dizziness, nausea. We'll go through them all in a minute, but somebody minding you also might notice, if your posture is going to change significantly, or your face changes a good bit, or you just stop making good sense in conversation. So any of those things, it's usually better to have somebody else recognize that so that they can direct you to the emergency room. Okay, so within the first 4 hours or so, that is kind of the most important window that you want to be monitoring, and that will be always straight to hospital to get checked out if anything bad happens. After that, we're then going to talk about like the next 48 or 72 hours. So for the next 3 days, let's say, we want to have like total rest. So no exercise, no activities that are going to be extremely taxing on your brain or on your body. And the reason for that is the stage where, if you've got all these toxic buildup in your brain has to figure out, all right, what am I going to do? How am I going to clear all this out? How bad is the damage? It needs time to kind of assess, to repair any of the major bits. Remember, anytime that you engage in strenuous physical activity, or you engage in difficult cognitive tasks, your brain is just going to be producing more toxins on top. So every time your brain and body is working, there's going to be some level of toxic buildup that you flush out naturally, in your sleep and when you're resting. But in the case of a concussion, you're actually just adding to a huge, huge pile. So we're going to want about 3 days of rest. And again, if you see a practitioner, this is likely what they're going to be telling you. And if they tell you something different, good chance if you're watching this far in the future as well, guidance may have changed. So it's another reason why I would say don't listen to just this video, especially in this beginning phase. So within that rest, a couple of things that we're going to talk about will be avoid screens, avoid any kind of highly stimulating light sources. Screens, obviously, loads of light shining in your face, but also you're usually doing something cognitively demanding. So that's two reasons why you might want to leave them out. And then, like I said, avoid any kind of strenuous movement. If you do want to do anything in that time, slowing your breathing down as much as possible, just practicing some like super slow breathing techniques is probably the big thing that I would recommend. You can find on my other YouTube channel. I'll stick it in the chat right now. Rewire Neuro Performance Therapy. You can find slow breathing techniques. I believe we have a video specifically called slow breathing, so you can check that out. And any kind of yoga slow breathing techniques, could be pretty good. All that's going to do is it's just going to help calm your body down, keep you in a more relaxed state. Obviously, with a head injury, your brain is going to be quite stressed out, and if you let that kind of momentum build and build and build, again, that's another way that the brain can produce loads more toxins, which isn't going to be so super useful for your recovery. So your brain is stressing out as a tool to influence your behavior, but if you can be on top of it and know, hey, I'm chilling out, I'm resting, I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to do, then the slow breathing can kind of help just keep things on a bit of a calmer level. The other thing I'd recommend to do is just make sure you stay adequately hydrated. So all of the fluid that is going to kind of flush out all of these toxins is going to require water. And if you're not sure about adequate hydration, rather than looking at all the guidelines on, you can find 20 different pieces of information on the internet saying, drink this many glasses of water a day, drink this many glasses of water a day. My kind of two benchmarks are if you drink water and it tastes amazing, you are probably quite dehydrated. Water should always taste pretty neutral. If it's tasting really, really good, that's a sign your body is really craving it. So that would be a sign that whatever your current water intake, it needs to go up. And if you're drinking so much that when you go to the bathroom, within a couple minutes, within the next 5 minutes or so, you need to go to the bathroom again, then that's a pretty good sign that you're at the upper limits of how much you should be drinking. Anything more than that, the water can just start dissolving some of the things that are trying to go into the cells, some of the good things. So that would be a sign that we maybe want to drop it down a little bit. It's not exact, it's not great science, but that's the ideal that I could tell you to kind of go between. So within those 72 hours as well, you're still going to be quite vigilant. You're still going to be watching out for symptoms. And we'll just talk now, because this is going to go the whole way through recovery for concussion. We'll have a little talk about what kind of symptoms are we looking for and what kind of intensity is allowed of those symptoms. So in terms of symptoms that you might want to look for from a concussion, pretty much anything negative that has started showing up that wasn't there before is potentially a negative symptom associated with concussion. So because your brain has different regions for different tasks and different functions and different things, depending on how you have had your specific injury, you may find that your symptoms that you experience are very different from the symptoms somebody else might experience. So anything that comes up, especially anything negative, so stuff that you're like, this doesn't help my life. This is a negative influence on my life. It doesn't have to be like pain or something like that. It could just be, you know, let's say a song just will not get out of your head. It's blaring loud and loud, uh, and you just cannot get rid of it. And that wasn't the case before. I would class something like that as a potential negative symptom and a sign that, again, this is another sign. Maybe I need to go check this out, and just see what's going on here. A concussion specialist is going to be able to diagnose you and kind of figure out what type of concussion you have. So it's going to be much more useful than just kind of general traits. So anything can go, but the sort of big ones that come up over and over again will be all the kind of standard classic things. So severe pain in either the neck or a headache, dizziness and nausea, um, severe mood swings. So especially negative moods. So anxiety, anger, sadness, anything severe and of the negative kind, especially if it's not normally characteristic of you. Then we've got things like difficulties with cognitive functions. So you can't remember things that should be quite easy. So let's say, if you can't remember your name or your birthday, that would be pretty severe. Maybe it could just be you pick up a can opener and you forget how to, like, what it's for, but you can't remember how to use it or something like that, and that's not usual. Then you could class that as an impairment of cognitive function. And then finally, any kind of major irritation from like light and sound or touch sensitivity. So any of your senses that suddenly become really extremely averse to the things that they're normally fine with. All of those will be negative symptoms. As a general rule, if you're not sure of how to classify each symptom in terms of intensity, I would always say, if you take a scale of 10, 5 out of 10 is the threshold where your symptoms become the priority to something in the background. So between 1 and 5 out of 10, that is where, you got a headache, but I'm solving a Rubik's cube and I've got a headache. Below a 5 out of 10, I can focus more on solving the Rubik's cube, and I'm aware that I've got a headache, but it's not taking up my attention. It's like I'm aware that this is there, but it's not necessarily bothering me hugely. I'm going to solve this, and then when I sit back down and I'm doing nothing, then I'm like, yeah, that headache's kind of annoying. That's below the 5 out of 10. And then 5 is a threshold where when you switch, now I'm solving, but the headache is the center of attention. I'm paying more attention to the headache than I am to whatever it is that I'm trying to do in my daily life. Um, so my kind of general benchmark rules about symptoms is you never let things get over a 5. That's true for pretty much everything that I teach. Once the intensity is more than you can concentrate on your other task, you're not really learning very much. With concussion, that would be an absolute. You don't want to be going over that 5 out of 10. If your symptoms get so bad that they're taking center of attention, they're telling you that whatever you're doing right now, your brain's not ready for it. It needs more time, it needs more recovery, and potentially the earlier on, the closer to the incident that you have this, is telling you, maybe you should actually think about going and getting this checked out. I know I've said that on a broken record, but absolutely, when things go above that 5, that's when you start to go, okay, I should think about making a move and doing something about this. My recommendation is you never really want things to get above a 3. I know it's pretty subjective to say, what is a 3 versus a 2 versus a 4. The idea is your symptoms want to be totally manageable. You can concentrate on everything that you're doing, and you've still got a bit of a way to go before you can't concentrate on what you're doing because, or you still got a bit of a way to go before it takes the main focus. So I hope that makes some kind of sense. I know it's a bit complicated, but that's kind of the scale I recommend for people in the later stages of concussion, especially. You're going to find that you're going to want to start pushing yourself because you want to get back to regular life. You want to get back into circus training, but it's just not quite possible because your brain's fighting back with these symptoms. So you want to know what level's acceptable. Well, you can go into it like a tiny, tiny bit, and then you sort of sit with that and be comfortable with that. Anything more than that, though, is again a sign to just kind of back off. So with your symptoms, when any of those symptoms are going past that number three, again, if you haven't already gone for help at this point, within those 72 hours, that's when I would think about doing it. Later on, as you go further and further, so in the next 2 weeks or so, I would say, okay, once you get to the five, and then after a while, you'll start to learn and figure out, which symptoms are a bit more manageable. But right in the beginning, you don't want anything getting beyond the three before seeking help. Afterwards, you still don't want anything going beyond a three, but you maybe are a little bit more chilled. If you get to the three, you stop, you have a rest, and things calm down, then you can probably keep going. Okay, so that's a lot of build up about like symptoms, what's going to happen right at the start. The more interesting part, and the bit where I sometimes get involved, is what does this recovery process look like? So within the first 2 weeks, probably what you'll get recommended by your doctor, your therapist, whoever you go see, is 2 weeks of, so after that 72 hours of rest, 2 weeks of light cardiovascular exercise. So very light exercise that just gets your heart rate up a little bit and gets the blood flowing around your body a little bit more. The reason for that is these toxins, the lymphatic system that flushes out the toxins, as well as needing a lot of water, it also needs movement in the body to pump the fluid around. It doesn't have a pump like the heart. It needs you to physically move so that the pump can get going. And so when you're doing light movements, it's going to pump the fluid around, and all of the toxins are bit by bit just going to get dissolved up in the water, and then it's going to float around to your bloodstream and out through your bladder, and that's all good. Obviously, if you start exercising too intensely, then the exercise is going to start creating toxins and waste products as well, and so you're going to find that if you're going too hard, actually you're not really giving yourself any benefit, because there's not enough space for these toxins to get diluted when there's already so much other stuff within the fluid. So most of the time in kind of concussion rehab clinics, you will be put on an exercise bike. That's usually one of the ways you can start with super low intensity. And also it doesn't involve moving too much of like your neck and your chest and your spine, which potentially is going to be under quite a deal of stress or pain, given that you've just had a head injury. And also, it's going to stop your eyes and your inner ear and kind of all of these structures in the brain that take a huge amount of energy in your brain. It's going to stop those getting super involved as well. So something like an exercise bike where your head stays completely still, but your body gets to move a little bit, is going to be ideal for those kind of first 2 weeks. And then after that, the timeline kind of just dissolves a little bit. So 2 weeks is kind of the estimation people will give. All of those kind of do the cardiovascular exercise is going to be do it until you can do like a full week of regular exercise without your symptoms flaring up past that 3 out of 10. Then once you've got to that stage, then we just start building back all of the attributes of your regular life one by one. So we would say after the movement, then we'd probably say, all right, well, can you go for a walk? Can you start moving around and just interacting with things how you normally would, and just see how far can you go before symptoms flare up. At this point, you may be interested in things like ear defenders, earplugs, sunglasses, sun hat, anything that kind of blocks out excess noise or excess visual stimulus. That can even be a good idea right at the very start. Just when your eyes are working harder, your brain is working harder. When your ears are working harder, your brain's working harder. So you may find that you get like an aversion to light and sound anyway. But even if you don't, spending a bit of time with, just ear defenders on, an eye mask, like a blindfold, if you're sitting doing nothing, could even be a good idea. Or, sunglasses. Some people even take a strip of tape and put it down the middle of their glasses. And basically, if you put a bit of tape here, then this eye can't see everything, but this eye can see everything that that eye can't see, and the same the other way around. So you can still see everything just as well, but there's just slightly reduced visual input, which can calm the brain down a little bit as well. So kind of just getting slowly back to normal movement, and blocking out the big things is going to be a second there on the list, so that you can hang up. Then probably next on the list, I would say, we're going to try and get movement back in the head, in the spine, in the pelvis and hips. And which one you start with is just going to depend. Everybody's kind of different on that one. But if you find it's still kind of difficult to move your neck, if you've got like severe neck pain, anything like that, then you could start trying to do movement with your pelvis. And because it's all connected up, movement in the pelvis is going to kind of move the tissues around in the neck, and you will find that your neck might start to free up, even though you're not actually physically training that. And then as it gets easier and easier, then you can start doing the movement around with your neck, keeping it all super light, and not pushing things too far. Once we kind of get the neck moving back, then we're going to move on to like those higher structures. So we'll look at balance and balance training to challenge the vestibular system. That can be balance just on its own. And then once that's comfortable, you might even start adding in head movements with your eyes open or closed. You could also then start to challenge what your eyes are able to do. Can you hold your gaze in different positions for 10, 15 seconds without feeling nauseous? Can you move your eyes left and right, up and down? Can your eyes jump from one spot to another? Any kind of challenge, again, pushing it just so far as symptoms start to show, and then easing off. And as I said, this can be anything between sometimes that whole process, we could be talking 4 weeks. Sometimes we could be talking years and years. The more work you're doing with a specialist, at this point, that specialist could be me. It could be a concussion PT, something like that. There's more and more options the further out that you go for what kind of person could be suitable to manage this. But that's probably what that process is going to look like. Once we kind of done the vision and vestibular and all those higher level neural structures, the final thing that we'll look at will probably be the kind of cognitive function tasks. So playing memory games, decision making games, basically adding loads of tasks with lots of different rules where you have to process them all really, really quickly. Not always, but that usually comes kind of later on down the line. That's usually the one that's most difficult to bring back, just because that part of the brain tends to get all of its fuel after all the other parts. So it's kind of a more energy reliant structure. So you'll usually add those things down at the end. And that's kind of getting back into regular life. After this point, when it gets back to, trying to get back into your circus training, you can pretty much use the same parameters and the same rules. So once you can move around quite easily day to day, then the safest thing to do would be to say, all right, well, I'm going to approach my circus training the same way as I just approached getting back to regular movement, which would be, first add in the circus drills that don't involve too much spine movement, that don't involve too much head movement. This is probably going to be like strength and conditioning stuff where it's very predictable and you're not uh, surprising yourself too much of the time, or you're not having to react in real time to things that are happening around you. And once that kind of feels like you can do it without any symptoms flaring up, then you're going to move on to moving the spine and the neck. Then you're going to move on to things that involve challenging the eyes and the vestibular system. So that could be anything that challenges balance, anything that turns you upside down, something that was spinning, I would leave right until the very end. So, all of the kind of spinning things, that's going to challenge all of those systems immensely. So you probably want to leave that till last. And then the kind of cognitive things. So, if you're in a show or something like that and you need to be totally aware of everybody else, that I would leave after all of the stuff we've spoken about. And I would also put danger in with cognitive function as well. So anything that you're doing where the risk factor goes up. So if you're performing at height, if you're training at height, or doing something where the risks of getting hurt are significantly higher than most normal training that you would be doing, I would consider that a cognitive exercise because it's basically decision making. You're having to assess how prepared you are for the danger. You're having to react in real time to the danger. And so the cognitive load on that task is significantly higher. So, basically, you wouldn't be putting yourself up high or up into any danger until you've gone through that entire process without symptoms flaring up reliably, over a week or so. So that's pretty much the video on what this process looks like. Like I said, this isn't something that I recommend you be doing on your own. This is like a resource to give you an idea of what the process might look like. But go get help from a specialist if something's just happened to you, in the last 2 weeks, or immediately, then I would say medical only. You go straight to your GP. If symptoms are flaring up intensely, then you're going straight to the emergency room. If it's all good after that point, then you can start. There's lots of different practitioners who could potentially help you. I potentially could be one of those. So if you're curious about what kind of work we could do together, getting you back to day-to-day life or back to your circus training or performing, then send me a message. My Instagram is circus trainer, same as the YouTube account. You can fire me a message there. At the moment, I offer free consultations, so we can have a brief chat and figure out what it is that you might specifically need. That might be me, that might be somebody else. And also, if you would like to have this kind of information from somebody with maybe a little bit more authority than myself, so somebody who is a concussion rehab specialist and physio from Canada, I've done a podcast on my other channel, so Rewire Neuro Performance Therapy. It's in the chat already. If you search for Concussion Podcast, then that'll come up. I've done a concussion podcast with Natasha Wilch, concussion specialist, and you can also reach out to her. She answers all the messages that she gets. So if you're watching this video and you're like, hang on, you just said at the start you don't have the credentials to diagnose people or anything like that, then definitely watch the video. A lot of the information is the same, because some of it I got from her, some of it is just the information that is out there, but she'll be able to also give you recommendations if you send her a message as well. So hope that was all interesting. Next time, I believe we're talking about overtraining. So I look forward to seeing you all there.